food crops this decade have reached world record highs. Cyclones are fewer, and still the media sells us this climate terror. And tonight I want to show you how. Take this report, filed for The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald the other day by reporter Mickey Perkins, who went to Fiji and found an island off Fiji and found, good God, the seas had come up so much, washed away so much of one of those islands that the locals are up to their chins in water if they stood where they once had stood on dry land. In fact, one woman told her that her particular island, part of the coast, had lost 100 coconut trees and around 75 square metres of coast over the past quarter of a century or more. Joining me is Tony Thomas, author, veteran journalist, columnist with the Quadrant online, who has in fact checked this particular report and done a most amusing article as a result. Tony, thank you for your time. 75 square metres of coastline in this Fijian island, gone. Should I be shocked?
No. You know what 75 square metres are? It's less than a quarter of a basketball court. Now, I don't know whether they've made a stuff up there or whether they've actually been told that ridiculous thing. So I'm glad you're onto it. That amazing photograph, though, is the pièce de résistance of the article.
Oh, well, about that photo, right, okay, so these are the two locals. They're allegedly standing where they reckon the coastline used to be when the oldest of them was young. That is some serious sea level rise, Tony, although I immediately did wonder why no one in Australia, we're not that far away, our oceans are still connected, you know. We haven't seen anything like that in our beaches. Why would that be?
Well, I've done a calculation, and the grandfather, whose name is Lodamau Fia, says that 60 years ago he was on dry land, and now the water's up to his neck there, and he's got his little grandson, and the grandson's water's up to his neck. Now, that means that the century-long sea rise rate has been 2.2 metres. Now, that is only a little bit more than the height of Shaquille O'Neal, the basketball player that Anthony Albanese brought out to spruik the referendum. Now, what's really amazing is that the seas have not risen there by 2.2 metres per century. They've actually risen in the last century by 8 inches. That's the width of my palm and my fingers. And there's been numerous studies of the waters around Fiji. The best one was by a Swedish oceanographer called Nils Axon Morner, who did a study 5 years ago, and he actually found there was zero sea level rise around Fiji, and the seas there are actually 1 metre nearly, 75 centimetres, lower than they were 500 years ago. He can find all this out from the beach geology and the way the waves have cut into cliffs and so on. So the story is just a big bunch of old rope.
But Tony, I saw other measures. The most I've seen is an annual rise over a shorter period of 4.4 millimetres a year. What would give you, about 40 centimetres, 44 over a century, if it continues. But there are two things actually going on in low-lying Pacific Islands, as we found out from really, excellent research in France and also University of Auckland. You've got these tiny rises in sea levels, but at the same time, particularly in the Atoll Island, you've got sand and coral being washed in the island, so that the study results show, for instance, from one from 2018, that there's a net increase in land area in Tuvalu, in this case, of nearly 3% more land, not 75 square metres, but 73.5 hectares, And that's despite sea level rise. And then the researchers say, well, look, these islands will be fine for human habitation for at least the next century. No need to panic, Tony, is there?
No, that's right. The studies, there's both that Paul Kench from Auckland University and a woman scientist called Virginie Duvat from La Rochelle University in France. They have studied more than 1,000 Pacific and Indian Ocean islands and atolls, and they found that definitely most, sometimes nearly all islands have either been stable or expanding. And the numbers that have actually diminished is very few indeed. What people could get confused with is beach erosion, and this erosion is often due to overpopulation in the islands, digging up coral for cement and building materials, killing off the fish that keep the reef healthy, and so on. So this reef erosion is the real problem. It's nothing to do with sea level rise.
Yeah, in fact, I recall the Kench, one of the Kench studies said 42% of islands were actually growing, 42% were not moving at all, and in area, in size, and 16% were shrinking. So seriously, it sounds like there's nothing really to worry about here. Now, the question is, how then, given all this, how then did this reporter get to this Fijian island to see this non-catastrophe?
Well, that's the thing that actually worries me even more than the nonsense in the article, because there's plenty of that around. It's just common or garden stuff. In this case, Greenpeace subsidised the Age to send their reporter and their photographer off to this island of Kioa. They gave them 3 days on their wonderful Rainbow Warrior 3 yacht. And according to the declaration by Mickey Perkins, they actually paid the fares to send the Age team to Suva to get on board the ship. Now, if they're going to take subsidies from Greenpeace to write their articles, maybe they're going to also take subsidies from Extinction Rebellion. Maybe they're going to take subsidies from political parties to cover their election campaigns. Maybe they'll take subsidies from ISIS. I mean, who knows? Once you start this game of being subsidised by lobby groups and so on, it's a pretty serious thing. Sure, travel writers get subsidised to go to resorts and praise the fluffy towels and the cocktails and things, and that's all completely harmless. But Greenpeace in this case was on a serious propaganda mission to pull the rug from under Australia's fossil fuel industries, to demand no new oil projects, no new gas projects, no new coal projects. And they were also, with the Age, hunting for human interest stories on that island, like some poor lady who's got a derelict shack on the beach, and that shack's getting eroded by the waves. So they're all writing up this lady, and the story will go to the United Nations. The story will go to the International Court of Justice in The Hague, where Greenpeace is trying to get a verdict up to condemn Australia and other Western countries, not China, not India, for not doing enough on fossil fuel. So we've got this secondary issue of the paper being subsidised by Greenpeace.
I mean, Tony Thomas, it's here where the Age and the Sydney Morning Herald are happy to have Big Green finance a reporter's trip to go and report exactly what they want, but the cartoonists, meanwhile, are boycotting, some of them are boycotting the Walkley Awards for Journalism because they are sponsored by Big Oil, by Ampol. That's terrible, but let's take the green money over here. It seems a rigged game. Tony Thomas, thank you very much for pointing it out. After the break, I'm going to catch up with Army Horowitz, this time